Welcome back. So it's still a beautiful Saturday morning right here on Sunrise on Channels Television. So from economic management with transit to flood management, and they're both related. One affects the other hugely. So the 2025 flood outlook is quite grim. And what's the intervention that is being provided by the subnationals and the state and the federal government, to mitigate these flood outlook. Joining us to have this conversation this morning, we have Mr. Stephen Margima Jabu. He's the technical advisor, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. He joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have right here in our Lagos studio, Mr. Sulaiman Arigbabu. He's the executive secretary, Human Environmental Development Agency, I believe Resource Center, header Resource Center. Mr. Arigbabu, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
But I'm going to start with Mr. Margima Jabu, who is a technical advisor for the Hydrological Services Agency. The report says 1,249 communities across 176 local government areas in 33 states fall within the high flood risk areas in 2025. Now, that's like nearly 1/4 of the entire local government areas in the country. How grim is this flood prediction, and how worried should we be?
Thank you very much for having me. The Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, as one of its mandate, is flood forecasting and issuing of early warning. Now, if we all recall, in 2012, the country suffered a catastrophic flooding event. And after 2012, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency began to publish what we call annual flood outlook. Since 2013 to date, this annual flood outlook, therefore, gives a detailed scenario of flooding that is expected to happen in the country from the month of April to November, and giving the magnitude of this flooding. Now, this week, the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Professor Joseph Talumun Utev, unveiled the 13th edition of the annual flood outlook in Abuja on Thursday, 14th of April 2005, where the magnitude of flooding that is expected to happen throughout Nigeria was unveiled to the entire nation. Now, before, our forecast used to focus on states and local governments that are going to be flooded for the past 12 years. Now, this year's therefore is a special one, which we have gone further to improve it from the previous editions. Now, the 2025 R4 has been segmented into 3 documents. Document 1 is about the flood forecasting that is expected to happen throughout the country and the magnitude of occurrence in terms of those areas that are expected to experience high flood risk, and those ones that are expected also to experience moderate flood risks throughout the country. Now, the second document is about flood risk communication, where the third document is about flood mitigation and adaptation measures. Now, the 2025 R4 has also gone to further focus on location-based and community-focused forecasting, meaning that communities that are expected to experience flooding, whether on the high-level flood risk or moderate flood risks, are being listed in every local government in each state of the Federation. And like you rightly said, we are expecting about 1,249 communities thereabout in 176 local government areas in 30 states plus the FCT are expected to experience high flood risks, while also more communities and local government areas in 36 states plus FCT are expected to experience moderate flooding this year. Now, these early warnings that are being given by NISA and the flood forecasting every year serves as a call to proactive action by all stakeholders, particularly those that are prone to flooding, especially those people that are living along the riverbanks, floodplains, and waterways. They are expected to be on high alert of preparedness and response to flooding that is expected to happen within their area, to put themselves at alert, to get ready for evacuation, to safe flood corridors. They are also expected to take actions that are required of them before flooding happens, during flooding, and after flooding. They are expected to take actions. And our flood outlook has outlined mitigation and adaptation measures that those communities that are prone to flooding are expected to take so that they can safeguard their lives and property so that we don't suffer losses that we have been witnessing year in, year out due to perennial flooding in the country.
All right. Let's bring the conversation home here in Lagos to Mr. Arigbabu. I'd like you to take it up from there and perhaps talk about, paint a mental picture of what the impact of these flood prediction will do to rising sea level, climate change before we expand on adaptation and mitigation.
Well, thank you very much. First, I'd like to congratulate NISA for releasing their AFO for 2025. One must establish that increasingly our capability to predict, to forecast is improving. Across Nigeria and indeed across the continent, African Development Bank, for instance, has helped across the continent to improve our capability for forecasting. So we have agencies like NISA, agencies like NIMET. They are improving on helping us to know what is likely to happen. They are not playing God. They are telling us this is reality. Last year and the year before, we followed their forecast. In last year, their October-November forecast for flooding, they predicted 44 local governments would be impacted. We went to 30 of those local governments, we went to several communities, and it was almost pinpoint accuracy. So that's one reality on one side, that we are able to know what is likely to happen. We're able to predict what the seasonal climate predictions will be. But two things are lacking. One, who is the person who gets the information? Does the information get to the hardest to reach? The people at the front lines. That is one. The people who take decisions, how much of this do they take into decision making? So these are things that we need to look at. But when you talk in terms of how will this impact us, we don't just take only the predictions from NISA. We take also from other agencies and have a holistic view. Earlier you were talking about the economy, and I saw experts talking about all those big textbook things, But there are some other things that grammar will not take care of. And that is the reality that climate change is on us. Flooding will come and reverse years of progress in areas of social infrastructure, in areas of education, in areas of economy. In 2022, we lost billions of dollars worth of crop because the flooding came just right at about when we were supposed to harvest. And if predictions have been properly followed, we could have missed it because we missed harvest period just by about 2 weeks. You know, either introducing early germinating varieties or changing the calendar, the crop weather calendar that we work with, things could have happened. So yes, indeed, we are able to predict better what is likely to happen. The agencies are upping their game. As a matter of fact, I believe that the agencies are even going extra mandate by trying to be the ones to reach the communities, and that is where the gap is for us. The agencies are saddled with scientific work, with analyzing what their predictions are, getting experts together to say these are the likely implications of what's going to happen. And you can see NISA also said that they are not just talking states and local governments now. They're even able to pinpoint communities that are likely to be affected. Are these communities aware that things will happen to them? They know. How do they get to know? Mostly because it's been happening year in, year out. But we can improve their awareness by giving them precise, or at least near precise dates, what they can do, and help. Because sometimes when you give somebody information about an impending danger, you can push them into panic. You can push them into a state of inertia. That is why when we went around and we asked many people, when you hear the information that flooding is coming, what do? You'll be amazed that over 50% say we start praying. It's because they feel helpless. So the kind of information that we need to give the people is not just about, oh, this is what is likely to happen. It's about this is also what you can do. One, like he said, before the flood comes. During the flood, we had a publication last year that addressed some of these things. But all of these things we are talking about, when you look at the size of the country and the impact every year, is just a drop in the ocean. We are yet to scratch the surface. And if we are not able to inform people and empower them to be the first responders to their own challenges, and then deploy resources of states, of local governments, of communities to help people, all these economic things we are talking about will be reversed, because one major flood disaster, for instance, can set us back several years, whether in terms of gains in health, gains in education. So we need to, one, make the work of agencies like NISA become more appreciated by communicating their findings. And this responsibility, I've said this several years, the bulk of this responsibility should be on states and local governments. And I give a simple analogy. Their report is in English. It has a lot of technical terms. Many Nigerians we know cannot read it. But there is no state in this country that doesn't have a state-owned broadcasting service. And even if you have 20 languages in such a state, such broadcasting service can deploy resources to speak in those languages. So we are not taking full ad, and these are low-hanging fruit. Giving people the right information at the right time, helping them to know what to do, and supporting them to do those things will not cost us so much, but it will save us a whole lot.
Let's take it back to Mr. Jagbo. Mr. Arigbabu has made very strong and vital points. Mr. Jagbo, I would like to respond to some of the things he said. One of the things he has talked about is that nexus, that missing link. Whether your agencies like yours are already overburdened with the scientific part, what are you doing with NEMA and SEMAS, in this case, to be able to help this recurrent decimal to be better handled? I looked through the books of one of my cousins who studied architecture, and there's something they call ideologies, things that influence, factors that influence architectural ideology. So they look at topography, they look at weather. If this is a recurrent decimal, I think the conversation should be changed in terms of mitigation. So what is that conversation that is missing in this whole management of situations like flood, in responding to some of the things he said?
Yes. NISA does not just stop at forecasting and early warning. After the release of this AFO, the agency also embarks on weekly flood warning, giving alerts about possibilities of flood happening on a weekly basis. And apart from that, the agency is working on an app that every Nigerian, wherever you are, whether you are located in the cities, in the rural areas, the agency is working on a flood app that will be able to reach everyone through various means of communication, either through the flood app SMS, through electronic and print media, or through public campaign and awareness. Now, after the release of this effort, the agency is also embarking on education, sensitization, and awareness campaign to those areas that it has predicted to suffer high flood risks in the year. Don't forget, this forecast is further broken down to seasonal forecast. For instance, the areas or communities that are expected to suffer this high flood risks in the month of April, May, and June are given. Also, in the month of July, August, and September, that information is also given. In the month of October and November, that information is also given. Now, you have been informed ahead of time that flooding is going to happen. And of course, those people that are living in flood-prone areas, every year they witness and suffer flooding. And of course, we know perennially, those areas, like I said, that are prone to flooding, they are known. But because, like my colleague rightly said, this information is supposed to be cascaded down from the federal government to the state government, and of course, the state governors are being communicated this information through the Minister of Water Resources, Honorable Minister for Water Resources. Those state governors are also expected to mobilize the relevant MDAs in their state, SEMAs, and community leaders, religious leaders, non-governmental organizations, and civil societies, etc., to carry on the baton to the communities that have been predicted to suffer this flooding. Now, NISA is effectively collaborating with sister agencies like NIMET that you have mentioned. We collaborate with NIMET in terms of data collection, meteorological and hydrological data collection, and information sharing. The agency also effectively partners with NEMA. NEMA uses the outcome of the annual flood outlook to prepare themselves to evacuate those communities that are predicted to suffer this high level of flooding when the need arises to safe corridors, as well as prepare supplies and distribution of relief materials to those that are expected to suffer this flooding. Also, we also communicate with National Orientation Agency, who have a wider reach throughout the country, because no local government that doesn't have NOAA office, National Orientation Agency, will effectively collaborate with them to help us cascade this information down to the grassroots at the local government levels. Like I also say, NISA also embarked on its own sensitization campaign by going down not only to the local government, but to those communities that have been predicted to be affected by this flooding. We go right down to those communities to sensitize them. We print flyers in their own language that they can understand, and advise them to adhere to those warnings mitigation and adaptation measures so that they do not suffer the impact of flooding. Like my colleague said, flooding has no barrier.
All right.
And we all know what flooding can do to the economy, lives and livelihood,
All right.
properties, infrastructure, and so forth.
So it would seem
we
that...
cannot continue to suffer this because we have always been adopting reactive measures rather than proactive measures. So this time around, like I said, this prediction has further broken it down to specific communities that are expected to experience various levels of flooding. So therefore, the various stakeholders are expected to take proactive measures
Indeed.
that can mitigate the impact of this flooding.
Indeed, Mr. Jabo, the efficacy of the early warning system is not in doubt that your organization has put in place. But the efficacy of your partnership may be what is debatable at this point in time. And this is where I want us to talk about mitigation efforts and ask, where the funds that have been channeled to mitigation efforts, how can we account for it so far? For instance, and I'm bringing this to you, Mr. Arigbabu, the last administration in the 2023 budget dedicated 43+ billion naira to the Ministry of Environment. And besides the 2025 budget anyway, to the Ministry of Environment, just months ago, following the Borno crisis from the Alao Dam, President Tinubu approved 108 billion naira to the subnationals for flood intervention and control. So over the years, would you say that the subnationals have accounted, even the federal government, significantly for the billions, I believe now, of dollars that have been channeled into the Ministry of Environment for mitigation efforts, not even adaptation now? Because what we see year in, year out is this fire brigade approach. We see many of our people in displacement camps, NEMA providing relief materials for them. But what about our efforts to reduce the severity of flooding ahead of time?
Thank you very much. And this is the heart of it all. I've said it here in your studio several times. I gave the example of the whitewater flooding that my colleague was referring to in 2012. After it happened, the president then released 17 billion naira and then categorized states into A, B, C, and all that. Some farmers got 500 naira. Some farmers who lost entire acres of land got 500. This is
500 naira.
500 naira. And those are those who got, actually. Many didn't get. And you saw then state governors fighting that we also want this money. There was no accountability. We don't account for ecological funds in this country. It's not only just Ministry of Environment that has responsibility. There are several other MDAs that have responsibility to take one action or the other, in terms of helping to address either flooding or some other climate extremes that we experience in Nigeria. So when you say that the president released 108 billion after the Alao Dam crisis, now that 108 billion naira is released along what plans, what structure? The same 17 billion that we released in 2012, if it was released when the forecast came out 6 months, 10 months before that flooding, and we spent it judiciously in terms of making people aware and in terms of helping people to know what to do and helping them to do some of the things that they have to do, would have been much more helpful for the country. We would have reduced our loss, the losses we suffered in terms of human life, in terms of properties, in terms of on our economy. So this is the same thing we are saying. Okay, the Alao Dam crisis, disaster happened. Things have gone quiet since then. There's not been accountability. So at the heart of this conversation is climate justice, is climate accountability. The accountability framework for Nigeria, I really cannot define it. Because when we say that Alao Dam happened, we've seen reports by your station and some other media outlets that shows that this is not just about rainfall. Yes, it's about rainfall, but it's also about human negligence. Has there been any account? We are not even talking about monetary accountability now, but that the people do the right thing when they were supposed to. We need to bring these conversations to the fore. That is one. And then year in, year out, the federal government, the state government release budgetary allocations especially, you see, in this country, the structure of things, especially when it comes to our finances, is that there are some things that we must do every year as a ritual. So if it is water hyacinth that is a problem in your community, government should release money every year. Some people are there making sure that that money keeps coming. Nobody is thinking about what do we do so that we don't need to be spending that money on that problem.
Water hyacinth
that could be a
every
resource.
year.
And so it's like a ritual. So it's the money must come out, and this is how we use it. No accountability. Accountability in this country, especially when it comes to extreme weather events like flooding, is almost zero. And it is the people who suffer. Let me tell you, we're in a community in Abuadua local government in Rivers State. See, we went to this community, it was flooded. There are a story building, two, in that community. And the people say, when the flooding comes, if you are able to secure a place on the upper level of that building, otherwise you have to leave the community. See, so what are we?
So that simply means that those are the adaptations I talked about.
For the people.
For the people.
It's insufficient. And then year in, year out, you go to Niger State, you listen to the story of the people. To Kwara State, we went around the country. Year in, year out, they do the same simple things that they are able to come up with. But it is insufficient because every year it takes a little bit of them away. And nobody is really accounting. So I am insisting that not only the federal government, the state government especially, and local government needs to be more accountable. We need to have conversations about, rather than really, okay, 108 billion that's been released since then, what has happened? Was it released to take care of things that are structured? Or is just given to specific MDAs? And then ecological fund, how have we managed it over time? These are issues we need to have a conversation around. Otherwise, we spend so much money building our economy, building infrastructure. Then one big extreme weather event comes and takes it all off, and then we have to start budgeting.
So let's take it to Mr. Jabo. I think you've just made a very valid point. And I want to stay with the issue of adaptation, Mr. Jabo, on this one, because there's nothing, absolutely nothing we can do about nature's wrath. What we can do is how to manage how nature decides to come at us, which is weather adaptation. He's made a very strong point using the rivers example in Abuadua, where two-story buildings are the safe spaces during those floods. So in my layman's point of view, if we have 20-story buildings, maybe, or we dig a dredge somewhere just to rechannel the water. So what exactly do you think can be done to reduce expenses, to reduce impact, especially looking at adaptation in your view?
I believe personally that prevention is better than cure. If institutions like NISA, who is in the upstream, are strengthened to forecast flood, and all the stakeholders are expected to do their part, I believe the billions of dollar losses that the nation experiences every year will be minimized or barely reduced. But rather, we seem more interested in the cure than the prevention. And people are more interested in supplying relief materials to the communities already affected. Whereas if our forecasts are being adhered to religiously, we can really minimize these billions of dollar losses that we experience every year. Now, NISA is not also stopping at just forecasting and issuing early warning. We are also into mitigation and adaptation measures. For instance, NISA is planning to desilt some rivers. The biggest transboundary rivers in Nigeria, rivers Niger and Benue, and their tributaries contribute most of the floodings that we suffer year in, year out. Now, the agency is planning a dredging measure from the confluence of River Niger and Benue at Lokoja down to Bayelsa and to the Atlantic Ocean, dredging and desilting, thereby ameliorating the high volume of water that these two transboundary rivers normally gather and empties into the Atlantic Ocean. The agency is also identifying key location areas where these excess flood waters can be diverted into retention and detention basins where they can be used for economic activities during the dry season. Apart from that, during this annual flood outlook unveiling, NISA has also launched what we call National Flood Insurance Program in 2 states. It's going to take place in Jigawa and Kogi State in collaboration with 2 insurance companies to make sure that those communities that always suffer damages as a result of flooding incident are compensated financially so that this can ameliorate their losses that they suffer every year. We are hoping and believing that apart from these 2 states, Kogi and Jigawa State, other governors will also key in, because you can see from the annual flood forecast of the agency, every year, nothing less than 30 states are always being affected by flooding throughout the entire country. So we pray and hope that the other states that always experience this flooding will also key in with NISA and the other insurance companies by ameliorating the losses of those people in their respective state that suffers loss due to flood every year. Other mitigation measures like an adaptation measures, like you said, people are expected to, for instance, now we are in the period of rainy season, people can simply plant trees around their houses. This is very effective in checking flooding because it reduces surface runoff and promotes infiltration of water into the soil and improves groundwater reserve. Other measures that people are expected to do, for instance, our farmers that always suffer losses due to flooding, they can embark on crop diversification and plant those crop varieties that are early maturing and drought resistance, and complement it with dry season farming. Other mitigation measures that we expect people to take is as simple as keep your environment, your drains, gutters free from that, and make sure that your drainage systems are free of waste. For instance, what causes this flooding? Apart from the heavy rains and long intensity rain, other activities of human beings contribute and exacerbate flooding every year. For instance, poor urban planning, poor habit of waste disposal, deforestation, and many other habits that are very inimical to the environment. Now, we need to protect the environment for our own good.
Indeed.
Because if the environment is sick, everybody is sick.
And thank you for that holistic approach.
The solutions are there.
Yeah, you can land on your thoughts in a few minutes, in 10 seconds, sir.
Whether I can...
Land on your thoughts in 10 seconds so we can wrap up.
Please, I beg your pardon, come again.
I said you can land on your thoughts in 10 seconds.
All right. Yeah, all right. My call is that the information is there in the public domain about flooding. We expected those communities that are expected to experience flooding to take proactive measures to safeguard their lives and property. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that holistic approach to looking at mitigation. Thank you so much, sir, for your time on the program. This will be a fine place to leave it. We've been talking with Mr. Stephen Marigima Jabo. He's a technical advisor at the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, who joined us from our Abuja studio, as well as Mr. Sulaiman Arigbabu, the Executive Secretary, Header Resource Center. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time on the program.